course, comes up over the top.
Congratulations.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Dale, Jefferson's Chief Advancement Officer, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the naming celebration of the William Annesley Jr., MD, class of 1948 Eye-Brain Center. Dr. Annesley was a graduate of Jefferson Medical College, now the Sidney Kimmel Medical College. Please join me in welcoming the founding director of the Annesley Eye-Brain Center, Dr. Robert Surgatt, his wife Debbie, his children Chris, Erica, and Susie. I spent some time Googling on the internet last night, and the only mention that I could find of Eye-Brain Center was the registration page for this event. The Annesley Eye-Brain Center is a true first of its kind. Like any moonshot, the Annesley Center is the result of a lot of smart people coming together to find a solution, and a lot of elbow grease, and the belief and the generosity of some true visionaries. It's my honor to be the first to thank a few of those generous visionaries who made today possible. Please join me in thanking the founding principal benefactor, Margaret Annesley Hayne, the daughter of the late Dr. William Annesley, and an early investor in Dr. Surgatt's vision. We are honored that Meg's husband, Dick Hayne, is with us tonight as well. I'm also pleased to thank other early benefactors to the center, Mark Butler, who is with us tonight, and Rosalie Chan, who resides in California. In addition to Meg Hayne, I would like to welcome members of Dr. Annesley's family who are with us today: William Annesley III, Sandy Annesley, Andrew Adis, Scott Adis, Bobby Adis, Joan Walton, and Marty Lusgarten. Welcome. And also with us is Dr. Annesley's longtime financial advisor, Vern Walker. I'd also like to acknowledge Vicki and Jack Farber, the founding benefactors of the Vicki and Jack Farber Institute for Neuroscience. Vicki and Jack are true champions of Jefferson and Wills Eye Hospital. Also with us today is Dr. Tony Turco, an SKMC graduate, a benefactor that endowed a chair in the Farber Institute and the chair of the Farber Institute Campaign Committee. Thank you, Dr. Turco. I never had the privilege to meet Dr. Annesley, but thanks to my esteemed colleague and very dear friend, Dr. Bob Surgatt, I have a sense of a man that they called the A-Train, as well as Biggie, Swordfish, Dr. A, and the Chief. Dr. Annesley was a luminary, and he embodied what Jefferson and Wills Eye Hospital are all about: a devoted teacher, a caring doctor, a precise surgeon, and a creative thinker. Jeff alumni would say he bleeds the black and blue, which are our school's historic colors. Dr. Annesley's legacy will carry on through the Annesley Eye-Brain Center, through the residents and fellows he trained, and through the work of Dr. Bob Surgatt. We are very excited today that joining us are several of his fellows and residents. I'll call your names and then ask that you stand. Dr. Jerry Shields, Reed Kinderman, traveling all the way from Hawaii, David Randell, Robert Lehman, Joel Porter, And also with us is Dr. Annesley's nephew, Thomas Coates of Fort Washington. Would you all please stand? Thank you. I first met Bob nearly 5 years ago, shortly after I joined Jefferson. Working at Jefferson and working for someone like our president, Dr. Klasko, you come across big ideas all of the time. But when I met Bob and he told me his idea for an eye-brain center, it was different. You read about movie producers finding the next big star at a diner or a shopping mall. Well, that's how I felt the first time I met Bob. I knew I was in the presence of an exceptional and compassionate physician, a pioneering and brilliant scientist, person who had a dream to improve the lives of others. The potential of Bob's idea, the vision of it, if you'll excuse the pun, the vision of it was more than extraordinary. It was a beautiful, intuitive idea. Poets tell us that the eyes are the windows to the soul. Bob said the eyes can be the window to the brain. The only thing needed to give life to his moonshot idea was philanthropy. The benefactors in this room and those that will join us on our journey will provide the boost. And now the sky is the limit. Today you will hear from brilliant, accomplished people. You will hear some amazing things and about some unbelievable science. And at the end of the day, I ask you to remember the Annesley Eye Brain Center is all about improving patient lives. Thank you for joining us today, especially from those of you that traveled from around the United States, and we also have a guest that joined us today from Turkey. It's a true honor to celebrate the launch of this center with you. It's now my privilege and pleasure to introduce the President and CEO of Jefferson, Dr. Stephen Klasko.
So this is really, really exciting for just so many reasons. For one thing, Bob and I were just talking about that. I'm an obstetrician, and I'm at the birth of a lot of things, but I'm usually not at the conception and the birth. And in this one, I was at both. But Bob did remind me that probably had the longest gestational period, like about 2 years between gestation and birth. But the reason it's so exciting to me is a few reasons. First of all, one of the secrets of Jefferson has been we're not afraid of the future. In fact, we just had an accreditor that came by and said, you know, one of the things we don't understand, you usually don't get compliments from accreditors. It's like the IRS saying you did a good job in your taxes. But they said, you know, you're one of the first places we've been at that's more optimistic about the future than the past. And what I said about that, as I thought about that, I said, there's a couple of things we've been willing to do, and they're all represented here. We've been willing to think differently. We've been willing to think about the future. If you think about the Vicki and Jack Farber Institute of Neurosciences, it was recognizing that people don't think in departments. People that have headaches or strokes don't think, is it neurologic, is it neurosurgic, is it psychiatric, or is it neuroscience? They just want people to take care of them. So the concept of building something academically, clinically, and from an innovation point of view that will bring the doctors and the research to where the patient was really something different for academic medicine. I applaud Vicki and Jack for thinking about that. The second thing is that we have amazing, amazing friends that are willing to invest in us and hold us accountable. And I really want to thank the Annesley and Hain families for being those friends that are really putting the pressure on us, not just to go and accept this gift and do some good things, but to literally turn this into something that people from around the world are talking about, and I promise you that's what we'll do. And maybe the greatest thing about how we've been able to move forward is the fact that we recognize that it takes more than two, and it's not just about us. And when you look at the relationship of Wills Eye Hospital and Jefferson, two great institutions, and if you look especially over the last 3 years, I think I When I first got here, one of the first people I met was Joe Bilson and Julia. And, we talked about how we're two great separate organizations. And we said, well, what if we were people viewed us as virtually one? We don't have to merge, but what if we took the best of both worlds? And when you think about Bob Surgatt, it's sort of the best of both worlds. It's neuro-ophthalmology. And what became a contentious thing, are you neuro or are you ophthalmology, became a marriage of neuro-ophthalmology that's led to this. So the whole concept of saying, I'm not complete without Wills, and they're not complete without us, believe it or not, is not a usual way that academic medical centers think. And I really want to thank Julia and Joe for having the faith in us to have that kind of marriage. So thank you. Margaret, I want to thank you as the founding benefactor. I remember when we first went down to the offices down in the Navy Yard and talked about this. I understood the passion. I've gotten to, talking to Julia and Bob, understand exactly what Dr. Annesley meant to Jefferson, to ophthalmology in general, and to improving lives throughout everything he did. So I appreciate you having the faith in us to recognize that legacy. So I get the extreme honor. My wife always tells me that everybody else does all the work and I give the speech. And there's nobody where that's more true of than Dr. Julia Haller. She's the ophthalmologist in chief at Wills, a chair of our ophthalmology department, ranked #1 for residencies in the country by U.S. News and World Report, Jefferson's highest ranking specialty. That deserves a round of applause. #1 in the country. Julia is a renowned retina surgeon, a leader and a mentor in the field. She's a trusted voice to the FDA, Walter Reed Army Hospital, the CDC, the American Academy of Ophthalmology, and just about any other distinguished organization that needs an academic ophthalmologist. In addition to being a renowned retinal surgeon, Julia has led Wills for now 10 years. I think the average around the country is around 2.5, so you've well eclipsed that. Together with her partner and our great friend, Wills CEO Joe Bilson, they've advanced Wills to the very, very top tier of the U.S. News list. They've established global partnerships, built an exciting new research trajectory within the Vicki and Jack Farber Vision Research Center. In her spare time, she's authored more than 350 publications, book chapters and textbooks. She lectures around the world. She has a busy clinical practice for complex cases. Whenever we have somebody from around the world that comes to us, says, I have something that nobody else can figure out, we call Julia. She has her work is at the forefront of gene therapy, regenerative medicine, and surgical and non-surgical treatments for macular degeneration and diabetic eye disease. She's a true Renaissance woman, and it's my extreme pleasure to introduce Dr. Julia Haller.
Thank you. Thank you so much. How thrilling to be here and to be part of history. Today marks the inauguration of a first-of-its-kind research endeavor, the Annesley Eye Brain Center, fueled by the legacy of one of the true giants in Wills history, and that's Dr. William Annesley. Known by many fond names, the A-Train and Dr. A, brilliant, creative, innovative, compassionate, and insightful. Dr. A and his memory will always be treasured at Wills and at Jefferson, now so fittingly memorialized with the center. In an obituary Dr. Surgatt wrote about Dr. A in the Wills Eye Alumni Society Bulletin, he included quotes from the many people who had written in after his death. They are all fabulous, but I chose Dr. Rob Mazzoli's today. He's a retired colonel in the U.S. Army and former ophthalmology consultant to the United States Surgeon General, and he perhaps captured that je ne sais quoi best. As a non-retina guy, I will always remember the collegiality Dr. A showed me during my fellowship. I think that he epitomized what I came to appreciate as the Wills family ethos. As big a giant as he was, he made us feel like colleagues, not underlings. I think he truly was one of the titans on whose shoulders we all stood, regardless of specialty. We are all the better for having known him. The Annesley Eye Brain Center also marks an historic partnership between Wills Eye Hospital and Jefferson. Serving as the Jefferson Department of Ophthalmology since 1972, when Dr. Thomas Duane's leadership united these two great Philadelphia institutions, Wills is proud of our heritage that goes back to our founding by the Quaker merchant James Wills in 1832 as the first eye hospital in the nation. In 1839, the first physician to be trained in ophthalmology as a specialty entered our doors, and since those times, we have not only trained the most ophthalmologists in the United States, but also risen, as aforementioned, but it bears repeating, to the U.S. News & World Report #1 ranking for residency training, as well as, of course, as our TOPS overall ranking, a linchpin of our education and training, as of our clinical excellence and research, has historically been our neuro-ophthalmology service with a long legacy of great physicians. Today, Drs. Robert Surgott, Mark Moster, and Adam DeBusk epitomize the very best of that tradition, and to have their clinical research and educational missions on one side of 9th Street, bridging with the basic research enterprise here at Jefferson, is not only historic, but a launchpad for what we truly believe will be transformational findings that translate into clinical care. I know I speak for my partner, Joe Bilson, our board, and our faculty and staffs in saying how excited we are about this innovation and collaboration benefiting the patients we serve. And I might add, how many places in the world have a neuro-ophthalmology service led by a former Johns Hopkins ball player whose lovely consort is a former Eagles cheerleader? Only one. True partners in this historic collaboration are, of course, Vicki and Jack Farber. They have inspired, nudged, and advised both the Farber Center for Neuroscience west of 9th Street and the Wills Vision Research Center east of 9th Street, so I'm thinking that the next funding opportunity for them might literally be a bridge across the road to continue with that firm but diplomatic hand that has helped so much in our long-range strategic planning and is so beautifully coming to fruition here today. So thank you so much, Vicki and Jack. My Wills colleagues know that one of my favorite quotes is from Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy said, "Far and away the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing." We all honor the hard work of Dr. A and his family and friends and of the visionary leaders on the stage today in getting us to this point, and the terrifically exciting and rewarding work ahead. What could be better than curing blindness and neurological degenerations? Worthy goals. So a toast to hard work and work worth doing. Thank you.
So Joy, I'd like to think that thanks to you and Joe, we sort of have a virtual bridge between East and West 9th Street already, and I'm not sure that we could ever get through the city, a real one, but it would be nice. So when I think about Jefferson's ascendancy over the last 4 years and what we've now come to call healthcare with no address, where Jefferson is defined by its care and caring rather than its locations, the poster person for that is Dr. Robert Rosenwasser. Dr. Rosenwasser is a Joel L. Osterholm, MD, professor and chair in the Department of Neurologic Surgery at Jefferson and the president of the Vicki and Jack Farber Institute of Neuroscience at Jefferson Health. But the reason I say that is while his academic credentials are way too numerous to mention, while he's widely considered one of the top interventional neurosurgeons in the country and the world, while he's led just about every neurosurgical society that exists, he's also been a leader well before it was popular to recognize that care starts close to home. So a good part of the reason that places like Kennedy Health and Abington and others have joined us is because of what Dr. Rosenwasser did before anybody did it. And let me tell you what that means. We have 36 hospitals that view Jefferson as their stroke center. That has increased every year. The traditional academic medical center mentality was join us and then you can send more patients to our expensive downtown hospital and spend $50 to park every time you see your loved one with a stroke. Dr. Rosenwasser said, no, if you're going to join Jefferson, our goal should be to get you to be a level 1 stroke center so that both the patient and their family can be close to home when they have a stroke. And of those 36 places, over 80%, thanks to Dr. Robert Rosenwasser's leadership, have become level 1 stroke centers. Not only that, he went the next level and said, hey, let's see how we can have technology help that, because a lot of folks literally need to travel 3 hours to have a post-op check, park at Jefferson, and then come back. So we partnered with a company called InTouch Health, which we now have a development partnership, where we can send patients home with a robot and do a lot of the neurosurgery post-op checks at home. The fact is that Robert Rosenwasser is the future of healthcare, the future of medicine. It's a good part of the reason that we were able to bring all the great neuro assets of Jefferson together. It's also a good part of the reason that Jefferson has grown from 2 hospitals to 14 hospitals in 5 years, because it was about literally how can we do the best thing for the community. It's really a pleasure and an honor for me to introduce my friend, my colleague, and somebody that makes me proud to go to work every day, Dr. Robert Rosenwasser.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. About 25 years ago, when Joseph Bilson was instrumental in me coming down here, I think we may be the oldest people in the room in terms of this environment. He said, there's a couple people you really need to meet because of neuroscience. It was Robert Surgott and Peter Savino at the time. He said, neuroophthalmology. I came from NYU and recruited to Jefferson, and he said, these are the 2 people you really need to meet. And from that very beginning, it was very clear that every time we shared a patient or talked about a disease, Bob Surgott would say, how can we do it better? How can we make it safer? How can we diagnose it sooner? And it was always about doing the right thing and the best thing for the patient. And I was really, really impressed. Every conversation was about critical thinking and discovery, and really was a role model to me as well in that regard, and really forced us to do things that I say, Bob, I'm not sure I should do this. He says, well, we know what will happen. This patient will definitely go blind if you don't do this. 100%. Give him the 1% chance. And he really pushed the envelope in doing the right thing and advancing the field. And it was always about doing the right thing for the patients. I'm not an easy person to convince about things, but actually Bob Surgott finally convinced me that the brain is an extension of the eye rather than vice versa. I also really want to thank Vicki and Jack Farber, because they really, visionary, had the structure to put really all of neuroscience under one umbrella, and it doesn't matter whether it's Wills or Jefferson, we're really one. And really, it's become a great relationship and been stronger. When we thought about this, Bob has been after this to develop this Eye-Brain Institute for many, many years. And I remember meeting with Julia. We talked about it probably 4 years ago when it first came up, and said, wow, this is really, we're going to both have to put our toe in the water and work this through, because we've never had a relationship like this, which is really meaningful. It wasn't just a collaboration. It was really, putting the risk together and putting the benefit together. And I remember us saying, they're looking at us, Julia, to see if we can bring this home. And with a lot of help from everybody, including the Haynes and the Farbers, this is something that happened. So I really congratulate Bob. You've been a leader to us, to all of neuroscience, and I think this is really the beginning of something really, really great. So thank you very much.
So when you say somebody's one of a kind, that often means different things. Dr. Surgott is really one of a kind. He's the founding executive director of the Annesley Eye Brain Center, the director of the Neuro-Ophthalmology Service of Wills Eye, the professor of ophthalmology and neurology at Thomas Jefferson University. He actually gets to sleep a little bit too. But if you just look at his background, he's been to some not bad places. He earned his medical degree, his undergraduate degree and medical degrees from Johns Hopkins, completed his ophthalmology residency at Wills Eye, did his neuro-ophthalmology fellowship with Joel Glazer at Bascom Palmer Eye, probably one place that even you guys recognize, Julia, in Miami, and a multiple sclerosis neuroimmunology fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania. That's pretty much of a full house there, right, Bob? And he's been director of the service since 2008. He's been a professor of ophthalmology and neurology at Thomas Jefferson, as well as a consulting neuro-ophthalmologist for Geisinger. He's been named by Ophthalmology Times as one of the 100 best ophthalmologists in America. And if you look at his basic and clinical research activities, everything from thyroid eye disease to ischemic optic neuropathy, giant cell arteritis, multiple sclerosis, trauma to the visual system. But the thing that just got me so excited is exactly what we're doing here today, exactly what Elizabeth said, the concept that we have even no idea today how the eye can start to help us understand brain diseases better, whether that's Alzheimer's disease, whether that's multiple sclerosis, or maybe even autism, in a way that 5 years from now we'll look back to today and recognize how important that was. I'd like to, as Bob comes up, invite to the stage Tule Kansu, Dr. Reed Kinderman, and Rob Etherington to come and join us up in the stage. And Bob, I'd like to ask you to come up to the podium.
Well, thank you, Steve. And so there's a story for everything about today and looking back and looking forward. And that's something Bill Annesley taught me to do a lot. So first and foremost, I need to thank my family for putting up with 20 years of medical chaos. Debbie, Chris, Eric, and Susie are here. I owe Jefferson's surgical department a huge debt, or I wouldn't be standing here without Jim Evans, Mark Rosen, and radiation therapy with Dr. Barad. And that then moves to Jim Harab as well as Jim Pertel in orthopedics. And looking around the room, there are people here excuse me, that go all the way back to Lower Merion High School. Reeves Lukens is a former school board member. Bob Donato and his wife Pat. Bob was my first teacher at Lower Merion, very first class. We ended up running the Narberth Summer Basketball League together for 2 years. Started the first high school women's basketball program in Narberth, first summer league for women in the main line. And Bob Bass, 1 year ahead of me at Lower Merion, is also here as well. We can then transition to, as Steve said, Hopkins Undergraduate School. Pat Barry made the trip from Bluffton, South Carolina to be here. And Arnie Greenspun, Gail's brother, would have been here, but he's delivering a paper for us and for cardiology in San Francisco that really typifies the eye-brain philosophy of multidisciplinary collaboration. And this paper shows that with an eye condition and then using cardiology technology, we have a 15% chance of finding the risk for stroke and preventing stroke. Work that wouldn't be possible without leadership like Steve, Robert, and Julia and other people. Julia touched on my less than illustrious athletic career. Does anybody know why I played Division III? Because there's no Division IV. All right. And then we moved to Wills, and we failed to mention Joe Markoff and his wife Phyllis are here, and Peter Rashado made the trip down from East Stroudsburg. And then we really get to Bill Annesley, and I had the pleasure of knowing him very well through my post-residency training and as a colleague and then a friend, as he, Debbie, and I would travel to quite a few American Ophthalmological Society meetings together. But Bill's message to all of us was accountability and trust, and the accountability was already mentioned here today. And it's that accountability and trust that we have to instill into the patients and their family. And Jack Kemp, the late Buffalo Bills quarterback and congressman, really said it very well for anybody in medicine. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So it's an incredible honor to be here to talk about Bill Annesley and what Julie and Steve said and what Robert has proven, that we're never satisfied with the status quo. As you know, our role in medicine has changed. We have gatekeepers who pretend to advocate for the patient, but have an adaptability to stand on the financial neck of institutions like Jefferson and Wills. So, based upon Bill's principles of never being satisfied with the status quo, we began the Annesley Eye Brain Center to support pharmaceutical trials, and realizing that this is a great partnership that's existed in American medicine, where we look at complex issues, debate legitimate data, and then move on with our experience and new data to develop new therapies and better therapies for patients. And this center has now expanded to include sites not only throughout the U.S., but also Australia and Asia. And you'll hear from Rob Etherington soon, who we're working with in remyelination in Australia, and about how a small company with a big dream is just what Bill Annesley would have loved. And that small dream with a big outcome is Jerry and Carol Shields. Joe Markoff, Peter Rashado, and I remember when Jerry's oncology unit was first formed at Wills. It was Jerry in a little spot in the back of the retina service, and look what's happened. He and Carol are now probably the most well-known and respected ophthalmologist on the planet. So it's with these thoughts that we now look forward to following these principles, because there is a silent majority out there of patients with neurodegenerative disease that will benefit from every new perspective of looking at that disease. And that's why you'll meet after this event with representatives and great scientists and great business people from Biogen, Roche, Novartis, Celgene, Alexion, Icon, as well. I hope I didn't leave anybody out, but I don't think I did. But this is the partnership that will make patients' lives better, because when you get one medicine approved or one technology approved by the FDA or by other regulatory agencies, we will impact the lives of thousands of patients. Thank you. So it's now my, what? Kansu. So it's my distinct honor to introduce to you Tulai Kansu. Her husband, Emin, is here, a former Jefferson Cardiza Fellow, who has been spending his last 4 days on the third floor of the Convention Center as Tulai attends the American Academy of Neurology meeting. Tulai was the first neuro-ophthalmology fellow at Jefferson and Wills, and it looks like she's ready to talk.
Good evening. I'm very excited being here again after many years later. This was a coincidental meeting, actually. I was here in Philadelphia for American Academy of Neurology meeting. And thank you for inviting me for this meeting. And thank you for opportunity to say a few words about the center, Eye Brain Center, and Bob Surgat. We have been here several years ago. I know Bob Surgat since 1977. We were both in training at Wills Eye Hospital. I was a fellow at neuro-ophthalmology, and he was a brilliant resident in ophthalmology department with a very promising future. The neuro-ophthalmology team at that time was Norman Schatz, Peter Savino, Jim Corbett, and Linda Orr. So we had such a good time, and I think I had a good training. There was one other fellow at that time, and he was smarter than me. He became a cataract surgeon, as I heard later on. We went back with Emin, back to our country, and I was able to establish a neuro-ophthalmology unit in our university and train many physicians, at least, to be able to speak the same language with the world neuro-ophthalmology. And we kept the communication with Bob Surgat. We met Debbie years later and the children. And they came to Turkey a couple times, gave talks, which had a great impact on Turkish physicians. So since the world became such a conflicted place to live, we value our relations and our friendships more than ever. To express my feelings, I would like to give Bob something from Turkey, from Middle Anatolia, as a symbol of peace and friendship. It's a pipe for friendship and Bob. And my final word, congratulations for Eye Brain Center, and good luck for your future studies, Bob, and all the team. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Tulay. And the friendships that last this long are created on respect, trust, and a common heritage and interest, as Bill Annesley said, in making things better. And I would now like to introduce someone who has truly made ophthalmology better in the greater Philadelphia area, as well as the world. Reed Kinderman practices in Morristown, but his office is the world. How many missions have you been on now? Too many to count, all right? He's made a couple missions to Hawaii to visit Dave Randall, but more of his missions have been to do cataract surgery around the world as well as other types of surgery. So, Reed.
Bob didn't mention that we were residents together at Wills a couple of years ago, Robert, I think, just a few. And I want to honor Debbie and Christopher and Erica Jean and Susan, and it's just a pleasure to be here with all of you. I think of Moody's, and I think of Chase Morgan, and I think of underwriters, and I think about what they would say about Robert's new Annesley Brain Center. Would they underwrite? Would they sell stock in this company? Would this be a good company? And the answer is they would, because of Robert Surgat. They would rate him a AAA rating. He had an outstanding education, as was recited earlier. He came to Philadelphia. He set up a practice that immediately became of the highest reputation. He has been honored in both regional and national journals for best eye doctor in America. He is respected, as you've already heard, by the large pharmaceutical companies and by the FDA as an expert witness to help them, and as an expert consultant to help them guide new products through, both on the government side and on private industry side. And obviously, for something like an academic diagnostic center like the Annesley Eye Brain Center, it's important to have those relationships. So the underwriters would give us a high rating for that. Bob is a superb educator. He is an eloquent lecturer. He has trained hundreds of residents, and in his own department has now trained over 50 neuro-ophthalmologists who have gone out into the field nationally to become practitioners there. He has published hundreds of articles, given many lectures. He's been a guest lecturer in many institutions around the country, and when he does so, he is known as a switch hitter, not just because of his skills as a baseball player, but because he can talk to the neurologists in one time of the day and the ophthalmologists the other time of day, all of them to each group separately. It's a really a special skill to be able to do that. I recently went to the Philadelphia Orchestra to hear Beethoven's Third Eroica Symphony, and it was about the same, excuse my voice here, it was about the same time that Robert gave his Saturday morning symposium, and I can't recall which was more eloquently and professionally given, the Eroica Symphony by the Philadelphia Orchestra or Robert's lecture. It's a pleasure to go hear him speak. It's just amazing. He's a terrific researcher. As you heard, he's already done some very premier work with, particularly as you heard, with testing that can be done to measure optic nerve function, which can then be used to measure progression of disease, and also as a testing device for pharmaceutical companies who are looking for an objective, reliable way to check the safety and efficacy of their drugs. He is a tremendous organizer. He has one of the best departments. Of course, all of the departments at Wills Eye are the best, but he has one of the best departments at Wills Eye Hospital, having recruited Mark Moster and Yuri Billick and Adam DeBusk to become part of his team there. He's also organized other significant gestures, including the vascular unit and, of course, the scanning unit, which he runs, which allows the large pharmaceutical companies to be able to test their products with patients. He is a particularly prescient forecaster. He sees things and he recognizes possibilities. You've already heard others speak about how he conceived the center. He can look ahead and see things. He's got a tremendous ability. He's very, very good stock picker, by the way. He also is very good at picking a superior woman to be his wife. And he knows his way around wines and art. I think his sense that this was going to be a go project is something he conceived and recognizes his ability to find something that would be particularly useful to move our profession forward. Those of us who know him personally know he's brilliant. He has an electric wit. He has an incredible sense of humor. He's perseverant. He is energetic. He sees things through. He's very loyal to his family and his friends. He's without any lack of energy to get things done. I think for those of you who've decided to contribute to this center, you'll be very happy with the return on your investment. And I think for the future doctors, residents, and patients who have the opportunity to benefit from his center, there will be a lot of excitement and realized gratitude. So, Robert, my long-term friend, congratulations.
So thank you, Reed. We've heard a lot about old friends. Now the time for a new friend. Rob Etherington is the CEO of Clene, C-L-E-N-E, nanomedicine out of Salt Lake City, whom we've been collaborating with now for probably close to 2 years, and helping him with a very innovative clinical trial based in Australia, where Annesley Eye Brain is serving as the reading center for OCTs, low contrast visual acuity, and other things. And it takes courage. Courage as a businessman and foresight and getting the right consultants in to know where we're going. And we're very fortunate, too, as faculty members, that each year we get to make new friends, new residents, new fellows. Peter Savino and I, along with Yuri, have always educated the Pennsylvania College of Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine residents, and they're here now as well. And Allison Huggins, who will be a faculty member at Wills and Jefferson beginning in September, is here. So it's this continual cycle of new and fresh ideas. And I'm pleased to introduce Rob Etherington for the industry perspective.
So it's already pretty obvious that I'm really among the least among the greats that have been at this podium tonight. As a young CEO, well, not that young, I'm 52, but maybe that's young. But as a CEO of a young pharmaceutical startup company, Bob has asked me here to really represent the vision of what could happen when the Annesley Eye Brain Center and industry connects on research. Our view is to really see how this could happen throughout the world at both small and large pharmaceutical companies, and to see these connections that Bob is certainly advocating and that can obviously be so transformative because of what Wills Eye is doing, what the Farber Neuroscience Institute is doing, and what is happening now and will yet happen at the Annesley Eye Brain Center. So just a comment about what we're doing and how Bob taught us, because that's, I think, the vision of what's happening here beginning today, is that we're developing a novel nanocrystal suspension, and our basic notion was, let's see if we can bring bioenergetics to the neuron, to the axon, and to really help in diseases that need energy. And that is indeed the case in remyelination and multiple sclerosis. And it is indeed the case in neurodegenerative diseases that require neuroprotection, specifically ALS, which, in fact, we just are very grateful to have received yesterday an FDA designation of orphan drug designation for our key drug. But we owe much of what we have built at Clean to Bob, because a couple years back, Bob started getting a sense of an expansive view that we had, and he narrowed it, he focused it. And I use the focus piece on purpose, actually, because that's kind of what is happening here. There's an expansive view of what could happen at the Annesley Eye Brain Center. And early on, we were just figuring out even the mechanism of how our drug might work. And Bob helped teach us some places we could go scientifically and made sure that we understood that if the eye works better and the brain-eye connection is made, as a research entity, as Clean is, in this space, we could do so much more for the patients. So Bob taught us, indeed, what has been said today, that the eye is a window into the brain. So much so that we use that now in every one of my presentations to investors, to other clinicians, to actually anybody that wants to know about Clean. I say the eye is the window into the brain, because when we see through the eye, we can unlock, we believe, therapies for the brain. And so I think this word vision should be used unapologetically here, because Bob and the new Annesley Eye Brain Center has a vision for what is in fact happening, visions that can happen to enable a more expansive view of how research could be with the eye and the brain. And when that happens, we also lead to a new vision of cutting-edge research, and Bob's engagement with me personally has narrowed my vision to really focus on what's most important, and that is when we do it right, as the Annesley Eye Brain Center is seeking to do, and as Bob is teaching so many of us in this room, then when we do it right, the patients benefit, and that's what it's all about. Thank you, Bob. Yeah.
And now, before we turn the microphone back to Steve Klasko, and it's about DJ time, right? I would like to introduce the family and the person without whom we would not be here, and that is Margaret Meg Hayne. In my correspondence, email, personal interactions, what Rob just spoke about of determination, drive, and focus is what I've learned from Meg. And what we can translate from the business world to the medical world is absolutely key and essential. And Dr. Annesley did that very well in his practice at Wills and Lankenau. He had a sense of that. But many of us need to learn that. And I learned that from Bill, and I've learned that now from Meg and Dick. Meg?
Hi, everyone. So I feel a little funny standing up here because obviously I'm not a doctor. I'm in the fashion business. And while I've given many speaks to people about fashion, I don't really think you want to hear about the latest trends. So I'm here to speak a little bit about my father, and I want to be here to support Dr. Surgatt with his vision. And as you can see, he's incredibly passionate about this new center that he's created, and you kind of can't help but get excited along with him. So I'll take you back a little ways. I can clearly remember as a young girl getting in the car with my father, driving down to Wills at Spring Garden on a Sunday for him to check in on his patients. I also remember him coming home late from the hospital, sitting down at the kitchen table with my mother, and being interrupted by the phone from the answering service, where he would promptly get up and take the call. So whether it was weeknight, weekend, in or out of the hospital, there was always a connection to his patient. I was going to say customer, but patient. And his goal was to improve their quality of life. Dad spent much of his career doing research. He traveled around the world giving and attending lectures. My sister Joan reminds me that when it was time for him to prepare a paper, there would be slides all over the den floor, stacks of carousels. You couldn't even walk in the room. The dog wasn't allowed in the room. And you just think today how things were done back then when you wanted to prepare a paper versus to what technology has done for us today. I think it's kind of funny. Besides his devotion to patients and his rigorous research, his other priority was mentoring and training residents and young doctors. He himself had a mentor, Dr. Robert McDonald, that had a huge impact on his life. How he was trained and coached was invaluable to him. Dr. McDonald became like a grandfather to us. We all really valued that special relationship he had with my father. My father continued this legacy throughout his career by selecting and mentoring upcoming residents that he felt had a gift. Bob Surgatt was one of them. He recognized that at a very early stage, and he thoroughly enjoyed working with Bob. Bob became like a member of our family as well. And in later years, my father relied on him to help him through as his health declined, and we as a family were incredibly appreciative of all of the support Bob gave us. Today, Wills Eye Hospital is much bigger and more prestigious than it was in my father's era. But the same principles still apply: patient care, research, and mentoring. My father would be so proud of you, Bob, what you've done and how far you've come and where you've taken the industry and what you're doing today. He would be very proud to have his name attached. So on behalf of my family, we would like to thank Dr. Surgatt and Dr. Klasko for recognizing my father's contribution to with the dedication of the Eye Brain Center in his honor. So thank you.
Okay, well, often the best part of this is the ability to get to talk to some of these folks with a drink, and I hope you guys will have a chance to do this. I just want to say that it means so much to us to have this gift for so many reasons, but one of it is because everything that Meg and Dick do in their professional and personal lives really requires creativity, requires thinking about the future, and in many things has been different than other folks have done. And it's, as I think about healthcare, and I get to go around the country talking about why we have Star Wars technology for patients and a Fred Flintstone healthcare delivery system, we need the kind of creativity that the Haynes have exhibited and created worldwide. I like to use this quote sometimes. Jason Kidd, since the Sixers are still in the NBA, we can use an NBA quote, still in the playoffs. Jason Kidd, when he went to the Dallas Mavericks, they were 24 and 52 that year, he said, I'm going to turn this team around 360 degrees. In healthcare, we do a lot of turning things around 360 degrees. Meg and Dick never do that. They go straight forward, and that's what the Annesley Eye Brain Center is going to do. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for participating. Robert, Julia, Joe, everybody else. Let's have some fun.